Suspended EFCC acting chairman Mr. Ibrahim Magu, we're told, has reappeared before the presidential probe panel over allegations after he reportedly released information on forfeited assets. And the relationship between the parliament and the executive arm of government gets frostier as the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, gets into a heated altercation with Honorable James Faleke over a House investigation into the NSITF matter. We dig deep into what has gone wrong in the relationship between the Buhari government and the National Assembly. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Okinbaloye in Lagos. From not so good news that we're bringing to you right now, from some of the stories just coming in, we can tell you that a new video has surfaced on the internet showing the execution of 5 persons by masked men in military camouflage. Before the men were executed, a voice speaking in Hausa language spoke in a veiled reference to 8 workers, describing them as working for infidels. The slain persons are believed to be 8 workers captured during a raid in the Mongono local government area of Borno State last month. A staff of the SEMA, that's the Emergency Management Agency in the state, who pleaded anonymity to identify his colleagues. Among those executed, who had also featured in a recent video where they spoke from captivity, pleading with the government to intervene. The military is yet to comment on the video. Some of the story just coming in about a video about a reported execution of 5 persons by masked men in military camouflage. We'll bring you more on that right here on Channels Television. Also then, the suspended acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, information coming to Channels Television is that he has reportedly reappeared before the presidential probe panel on the allegations leveled against him by the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami. Earlier today, information surfaced about Mr. Magu, reported to have accused the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, of frustrating efforts made by the Anti-Graft Commission to transparently dispose vessels forfeited to the Nigerian government. Mr. Magu accused the AGF of working at cross purposes with the Commission in the disposal of vessels involved in illegal activities to the extent of costing the country at least 283 million naira in recovered assets. Mr. Magu's response suggested that the AGS action was responsible for the loss of one of the vessels, which was carrying about 1,459 metric tons of premium motor spirit. Mr. Magu, in that letter, is also giving details of some of the forfeited assets, which he claims in that letter through his lawyer, that it's being handed over to officials of some MDAs and the presidency. That's one of the matters we are going to be trained tonight on the program. It's a 1-hour stretch of the show. Tonight is a midweek edition. Just stay with me. We're going to look into what happened with Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, and Honorable Faleke. It does look at things and not really working out between the Parliament and the Executive Arm of Government. That's our menu tonight on the program. But first, let's check political roundup.
President Muhammadu Buhari today presided over the 9th virtual Federal Executive Council meeting at the State House in Abuja. It began with a moment of silence for the late Issa Funtua, who died this Monday of cardiac arrest. 7 ministers, along with the Chief of Staff to the President, Head of the Civil Service, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the National Security Advisor, and the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, were in attendance. Members of the People's Democratic Party in Ondo State are today voting to choose their own candidate for the October the 10th governorship election. 8 aspirants are vying for the PDP ticket, including the Deputy Governor of the state, Agboola Ajayi, who recently defected from the ruling All Progressives Congress in the state. The chairman of the PDP Governorship Primary Election Committee, Governor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, has expressed hope that the election will be seamless and the outcome will be acceptable to everyone. Meanwhile, 2 men have been arrested at the venue of the primary election with ballot papers already thumb-marked for one of the aspirants. Channels Television gathered that one of the men caught is a chieftain of the party in Ose local government area of Ondo State. The Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed the suit challenging the deregistration of Reform Advancement Party and the Democratic People's Party. Delivering judgment in the suit filed by the parties challenging their deregistration, Justice Evelyn Maha held that INEC rightly deregistered the parties in line with the provision of Section 225 subsection A of the Nigerian Constitution. The parties had filed a suit claiming that the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC lacked the power to deregister them for alleged poor performance. The parties had filed the suits claiming that the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC lacked the power to deregister them for alleged poor performance. The Senate confirmed 39 non-career ambassadors and 1 career ambassador from the FCT. The upper chamber is confirming the ambassadors following the recommendation in a report from the Committee on Foreign Affairs, who screened the nominees. However, some senators disapprove of the nomination of some nominees, alleging lopsidedness and relegation of minority groups. The Labour Party in Edo State says it is not surprised by the contents of an apology tendered by the former national chairman of the All Progressives Congress APC, Adams Oshiomhole, which according to them portrays his selfish interests. The governorship candidate of the party, Mr. Isaiah Osifo, who stated this in Benin City, the Edo State capital, insists that Mr. Oshiomhole is trying to manipulate the people by promoting a candidate whom he called a criminal back in 2016.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So, Mr. Ibrahim Magu has perhaps opened what some people may call can of worms about what he is talking about the forfeited assets. So let's get to the conversation now, everyone. I have Mr. Aliyu Lemu is a lawyer and a policy analyst. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Lemu, for joining us tonight. Perhaps you might be able to speak to some of the issues that have been raised in the reported letter from Mr. Magu's lawyer. We understand that Mr. Magu has reappeared before the presidential panel, and we also like to tell our viewers that we've spoken to the Office of the Attorney General and that of the Presidency about some of the allegations raised, which we've not really gotten any response. Maybe because before the end of the program, we might get some response from them. But let me allow Mr. Lemu to weigh in. Give us an information about Mr. Magu's reappearance. When was he invited? And what are the allegations, or whether or not we now have an official allegations laid against before Mr. Magu?
Thank you very much, Sean. Good evening, and thanks for having me on the program. Up until this moment, as I speak to you, Mr. Magu has not been officially given or supplied the allegation against him, either by the Attorney General of the Federation or any committee set up by the Presidency to investigate his activities, or any petition written by any individual alleging malpractices by him while in holding office as the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. It seems to be an orchestrated and systemic plan designed to prejudice the mind of the public and the committee in carrying out its work. I wouldn't want to disclose confidential information of what is transpiring in the sittings of the committee, but up until this moment, Mr. Magu has only been asked general questions. He has not been directly confronted with any specific allegation.
But Mr. Lemu, we understand. Sorry to cut in, Mr. Lemu. We understand that Mr. Magu has reappeared before the Justice Salami panel. When was the invitation extended to him, and what has he been asked so far? Because it's few hours since he was said to have appeared before the panel.
Yes. Since he was released on bail last week, Mr. Magu has not been re-invited to appear before the committee. But as a law-abiding and dutiful citizen, every day he reports to the venue of the sitting of the committee from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. until today when he was called into the committee. But like I have said earlier, he has not been given a copy of any allegations against him. Rather, it seems to be an orchestrated media trial designed to poison the mind of the public toward Mr. Magu. There is no specific allegation as yet, but every day the media is feeding a frenzy of a certain narrative designed by individuals who want to tarnish the image of and hard-earned reputation of Mr. Magu. Mr. Magu's lawyers have written to the committee making complaints about these prejudicial publications. Up until this moment, the committee is yet to respond to the letter. In fact, the committee has refused to accept the letters written by Mr. Magu. But what I want to say is this. You see, every time somebody points a finger, 4 fingers point back at him. From certain disclosures being made by Mr. Magu today, at the end of the sitting of this committee, the whole country will be shaken to its foundation on the level of allegation, on the level of criminal activities being perpetrated by the accusers of Mr. Magu, who have orchestrated this whole grand design to discredit him before the public. The plan is simple. Mr. Magu is due for the submission for confirmation by the president sometime later this year. But the actors in this grand design, who are the beneficiaries and enablers of corruption, want to frustrate that attempt. And this is the script that is being played out by the media. The media has lent itself as a willing tool by enablers of corruption to spread
I like to cut in. I like to cut in. And Mr. Lemo, I like to cut it and correct you. If you may pull back those words, because it is, I mean, I'm a member of the media, I'm a journalist, and when you use just a brush to paint everybody in the media that we are enabling corruption, that is unfair. We are the ones who invited you to speak for Mr. Magu this evening. It won't be unfair for you to sit there at our own invitation and say to us on this program that the media with one brush and use it to paint everyone. That's unfair, isn't it?
Mr. Sheung, perhaps I take back some of that. But certain sections of the media, I wouldn't like to mention particular print media, but I'm sorry to paint the whole media with a certain tab brush. But certain section of the print media have lent themselves as willing tool. With all due respect, Mr. Sheung, the committee is set up to investigate these allegations. It's supposed to be still out and has not yet returned with a verdict. But the certain sections of the organized media, not social media cannot be monitored or regulated. But certain section of the organized media, especially the print medias, are the ones churning out untruths every day, unverified facts, unsubstantiated allegations, which have not been directly presented to Mr. Magu to refute.
Mr. Lemo, let me cut in, and I quickly, if you can validate the allegations and some of the issues that are being raised in the letter that was said to have been transmitted to the Justice Ayo Salami-led panel, which is titled Alleged Case of Conspiracy, Enrichment, Abuse of Public Office, and Other Infractions. In that letter, it was said that some vehicles recovered by the EFCC were auctioned to the Presidential Villa, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, as well as the Federal Inland Revenue Services. And in fact, some of these vehicles have not been paid for. Can you validate? Do you have document? Do you have evidence to support some of these claims made in the letter written by Mr. Magu's lawyer?
Very well, Mr. Sheung. All of these actions you speak to are not the personal actions or conduct of Mr. Magu, but the activities of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission as an institution headed by Mr. Magu. A lot of recoveries were made, monies, properties, and vehicles. It is an act of economic, should I say, wiseness for Mr. Magu, for the EFCC under Mr. Magu, to make a position to the government that government, we have certain vehicles which have been forfeited to the federal government based on the prosecutions or forfeiture orders made by courts. Instead of the huge amount of monies expended by the government every year to buy new vehicles, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has vehicles which it seeks presidential approval to allocate or either allocate or auction to certain agencies of government, so that instead of the government taking its hard-earned crude revenue and taxpayers' money to businessmen to buy cars outside, the vehicles are available and can be allocated at either a fraction of those price or at no price at all to government parastatals. It's actually a stroke of economic genius.
So, Mr. Lemu, if you look at some of the issues raised against Mr. Magu, is the fact that he's unable to account for the interest accrued to the 550 billion recovered funds, as well as recovered vehicles and houses. In some of these issues, I remember that the former Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, raised the issue over the matter of these funds that are being forfeited, or the funds that are being recovered. But again, the Attorney General of the Federation is yet raising another matter. Is it coincidence that this is happening? And two ministers, one former, one present minister, is accusing Mr. Magu about this. Don't forget also that Mr. Magu's agency is being superintended by the Attorney General of the Federation.
Very well, Seun. You see, these are part of the unsubstantiated allegations being churned out in some sections of the print media. You see, the truth of the matter is, since this government came into power, all government revenue and income are being paid directly into the Treasury single account of the federal government of Nigeria, domiciled with the CBN. The EFCC is no exception. All the revenues accruing from recovered or looted funds by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission are being lodged with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Being an account of the federal government, that money does not generate interest. Recall when this administration came in, it gave a policy directive that all funds be moved from commercial banks to the Central Bank of Nigeria. That being the case, every average person in Nigeria knows that the central bank is the banker's bank, or the government's bank. It does not, the money kept to the CBN does not generate interest. That being the case, the issue of the funds recovered generating interest does not arise. That is one issue. On the second issue of the properties being recovered by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission under the stewardship of Mr. Magu, some of these properties in the past are being made to waste. But the economic masterstroke and ingenuity of Mr. Magu under his stewardship as the chairman of EFCC is to save government revenue by taking out hard-earned taxpayers' money and oil revenue to give to private individuals. Government is being saved money by giving these properties to agencies and parastatals of government to occupy either free or at subsidized rates. The issue of the Voice of Nigeria and other parastatals is something that's common for everybody to know. That is the second point. On the third point, that the figures stated by Mr. Magu being disputed by either the Minister of Finance or the Attorney General, all of these are available records. The right place to make this investigation, Mr. Shonsa, is not on the pages of the print or electronic media. The Minister of Finance has access to the record at the CBN. The Accountant General of the Federation, the Treasurer of the Accountant General of the Federation and the Auditor General of the Federation have the statutory mandates to investigate the proceeds recovered by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and establish with certainty, beyond any iota of doubt, that some funds have been missing.
All right.
Instead of the Minister of Finance,
we must leave it at that, Mr. Lemu. Yeah, we must leave it at that, Mr. Lemu. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Lemu, for your time tonight. Appreciate your time. Well, we need to also tell you that we've extended invitation to the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. We've spoken also to the presidency to get reaction to these, but we've not yet gotten any. We hope that we might be able to get some reaction to some of the issues being raised by Mr. Ibrahim Magu, who is said to have reappeared before the Justice Salami-led presidential panel. We take a break, and when we come back, we dig into the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige's altercation with Honorable James Faleke. What is at the bottom the baseline of that altercation and what is the way forward in what has become a major crisis between the executive and the legislative arm of government in Nigeria. Join us again, everyone. Politically speaking, everyone, the center is no longer holding under the Buhari government. It's not my opinion, it's what the situation looks exactly like. So the Minister of Labour yesterday, Dr. Chris Ngige, threatened to take legal action against a member of the House of Representatives, Honorable James Faleke, for his comments against him during plenary on the 7th of July this year. Dr. Ngige made a threat during the investigative hearing of the ad hoc committee of the House, which is investigating an alleged breach of presidential directive by the Minister of Labour following the directive for the suspension of the top management and executive officers of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF. Honorable Faleke, while debating a motion on the floor of the House, had, among other things, accused the minister of hijacking the budget of the NSITF and removing the board to cover his tracks. Take a listen to what transpired between the minister and Honorable Faleke.
My colleague and brother in the National Assembly, Honorable Faleke, did not speak onto that motion in the way of parliamentary processes. Accusations were heard on me. I was judged.
Mr. Minister, you also use your privilege as a minister to adjudge the suspended members of NSITF as being guilty.
Fine. It means I have another alternative. You will meet me in court after this place.
So that was what happened yesterday. Perhaps at some point on the program we might give you some. It was a longer one between them yesterday. But don't forget what happened also between the Minister of State for Labour, Mr. Festus Keyamo, who was not happy with the members of the National Assembly. Take a listen again. I'll remind you of that too.
Lawmakers are concerned by the revelation.
So let's get talking on this one. Tonight, I've brought experience and those who are in the know to give us an understanding of what is really happening under the Buhari government. I have a former Minister of Works, Senator Adesanya Ogunlewe, who was also a former member of the National Assembly. Thank you so much, Senator Ogunlewe, for coming on tonight. And also a former member of the National Assembly, Senator Shehu Sani, also joins us from our Abuja studio, and as well as the special advisor to the president on National Assembly matters, Honorable Umar El Yakub. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Perhaps I should begin with Honorable El Yakub. Give us a sense of what is happening. Is there a crisis in this government? Because we saw when the National Assembly leadership met with the president came out to say, look, appointees of government must cooperate with members of the National Assembly. But day after day, we're seeing a fallout and face-off between members of executive and the members of National Assembly. Things are not looking well, is it?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I'm glad you opened by mentioning the directive of Mr. President to not only recognize and appreciate the National Assembly, but also to respect the membership of the National Assembly, i.e., to respect them by appreciating that this relationship, which is also premised on the appreciation of the principle of separation of powers between the various arms of government, has conferred the right of oversight on the National Assembly. And to that extent, of course, when any arm of government, i.e. the judiciary or the executive, are invited in the course of oversight functions by the National Assembly, they ought to respect that invitation and honor that invitation. And what Mr. President said, having been someone that is known to respect the rule of law, to respect the processes, and of course having sworn to defend and protect the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is standing firm to ensure that there is harmony, of course, but also there are distinct functions that are associated with various arms of government, and each arm is allowed to operate within that right. So what I can tell you is that the National Assembly is exercising its right of oversight by having these committees, be they standing committees, ad hoc committees, be they investigative hearings, or the normal course of oversight, to invite members of the executives, i.e. the MDAs under the executive, for explanation on certain issues. And this is what is happening, and this is what you're seeing. And of course, in your opening also, you haven't stated that you would recognize that the executive had heeded that directive and the answer to the invitations by presenting themselves to the membership of the committees when so invited.
So let me get to Senator Ogunlewe before I go back to Abuja. You have been in both arms of government. What is playing out here? What do you think is the cause?
I think it is the party that is not working well. Under the Constitutional Party, there is what is called a caucus meeting that must be holding every three months, where all these issues will be sorted out. If they call, because every member of the National Assembly, the principal officers are members of that caucus, ministers are members of that caucus, the party chairman, the president is a member, so that we can iron out things. What is playing out, it is incoherence in the APC as a political party. We should not allow this to happen unabated. It is not good for the image of the party. It can be controlled. If you have a party caucus meeting, all these issues can be ironed out. But apparently, they've never called a caucus meeting before.
When you served as a minister, we saw a situation where Senate presidents were removed.
Because there was no caucus meeting.
No. I'm making reference that
yes.
This is perhaps not the worst we've seen, isn't it? Under the Obasanjo government, we had a situation where, in fact, the chairman of the party was removed at some point.
Yes.
We had issues where the Senate president, in the space of 4 years, about 2 or 3 Senate presidents were removed under that government. So, but in the case of the APC now, is it the case only of the party leadership or the leadership of the party generally?
It is the executive that is always believing that there is no party. If they believe in the party, all these issues can be ironed out within the party caucus. The constitution of the party provides for this avenue. And they must meet regularly to iron out things. Because Nigerians voted for them not to quarrel. All these things they are doing is not to the benefit of the voters. So
but some of the things that are coming out, are they not for the benefit of Nigerians? Because we are hearing humongous amount of money that have been spent, siphoned, and things that are not done right. If they were not fighting, are we going to hear some of these things?
Under Section 85, 86 of the Constitution, that's the position of the Auditor General of the Federation. And all his functions are specified there. They should allow the Auditor General of the Federation to perform their duties. And that is why they put it in the Constitution. There is no need to fight. Just ask the Auditor General of the Federation to go into the matter, and they will now prepare a report for the National Assembly.
So before I go to Senator Shehu Sani, I know you may not be biased here because you served in both arms of government. Which arm of government under the Buhari administration is overstepping its bounds?
It is the executive that is not coordinating enough. The executive has responsibility to coordinate for the party. And it's provided in the concern of the party caucus, so that everybody will sit down together. Then they will iron out all these things instead of going to flex muscle. Who is the National Assembly? Who is the executive? Who is the legislature? It's not good for us.
Honorable El Yakub is the one that's supposed to be advising the president on that matter. I'll allow him to respond to it because that's your job. You are supposed to make sure that there is no quarrel between the National Assembly and the executive arm of government. But before I come to you, Senator Shehu Sani, when you were in the National Assembly, the 8th Assembly was accused of frustrating the efforts of the executive. And that a lot of fears some of you had was that this 9th Assembly was going to be a rubber stamp. Did they disappoint you?
Well, thank you, Shewin, for having me. Well, first of all, a clarification has to be made. The National Assembly or the Parliament is not a unit or a department of the executive arm of government. It is an independent arm of government recognized by the Constitution and by the laws of the country. And as such, it is expected to perform its function as an organ of government independently in the spirit of separation of powers. But what is happening today differs from what had happened during our time. During our time, we clearly stated by our action, by our word, and by our conduct that nobody can dictate to us what to do and how to do it. We are an independent arm of government, and we performed our function objectively and also held the executive arm to account. What is happening today is unfortunate because you can see an increasing disobedience and disrespect for the National Assembly by a section of the executive arm. And I think it is a clear message that the covenant of loyalty that exists between the National Assembly and the executive is clearly showing some sign of weakness. And once you demonstrated as a parliamentarian that you are there to do the job of the executive, to hook, line, and sinker, to be obsequious, to be subservient, you are bound to lose respect by different heads of ministries, departments, and agencies. And I think this is actually what is happening. So it is for the National Assembly to muster the courage to assert itself, and if harmony needs to be made, there should be an intervention of the party. But I think part of this problem, as clearly stated by Senator Agulewe, has to do with the malfunction in the party. I believe perhaps the crisis in the party as it exists made it impossible for the party to be able to harmonize those of them on the other side of the executive and those of them in the National Assembly. And we are bound to see these things grow in as much as the executive arm, elements within the executive arm continue to show disrespect for the parliament. There will certainly continue to be disruptions, and it is incumbent on the party to intervene and to harmonize things. During our time, there were crises, problems between National Assembly and the ruling party, National Assembly and the executive arm, and the party also at the executive arm of government. But this time around, for people who have decided to unconditionally support, accept, stamp whatever the president has presented before them, there ought not to be conflict. But there is bound to be conflict because the heads or parastatals of government, once they see a parliament that is subservient, that has perhaps surrendered its own independence, there will bound to be disrespect, and this is what we are having now.
Let me put this to you. There were those who believe, and at some point we had this conversation about the possibility or the fears that this Ninth Assembly might just be a rubber stamp parliament of the executive. Is it a rubber stamp from your own point of view?
Well, every session of the parliament has its own challenges and focus and the realities of its own time. So the idea of rubber stamp comes from the fact that they perhaps wanted to be different from what we were, because we have been seen to be belligerent and combative to the executive. So they form for themselves a new spirit of acting in harmony with the executive. And once you say you are acting in harmony with the executive, as it is, certainly you will have your own label. And we had our own label, and I believe this is the label which they have, but it is left for them to prove that they were not rubber stamp.
What is the label?
The parliament is supposed not to be a rubber stamp. Yes.
What is the label? Huh? You said they have a label, and what is that label?
What did you mention now?
I asked if this Ninth Assembly is a rubber stamp parliament. Are they?
Well, it is, as far as I'm concerned, it is for Nigerians to judge. But I, as a former member of the parliament, I can only speak of our own time. But it is for them to write themselves, their names in gold or in the mud on where they stand in terms of independence and the sacrosanctity of the National Assembly as an organ of government.
Right. So let me go to Honorable Yakubu, because the role of the job of Honorable Yakubu is to ensure that the president is well advised in the situation of the National Assembly. But Senator Ogunlewe here said that, look, there seems to be some disorganization from the party leadership point of view. What is happening? Is it because of the situation that there is a caretaker committee, or your party had a crisis before now, that this is happening?
Well, let me start by respectfully disagreeing with the distinguished senator concerning the relationship, which he also mentioned is harmonious. I believe the membership of the National Assembly were elected to serve the Nigerian people. So also is the president, who heads the executive arm of government. And to work for Nigerians, there was, and indeed there is always going to be a need for that kind of harmonious relationship, which had been in existence from the beginning of the 9th Assembly. And there are so many benefits and successes recorded because of that relationship. And I assure you that the executive arm of government, not only does it respect and recognizes the National Assembly as an independent arm of government, but we don't see them as rubber stamp, and of course have not been acting as rubber stamp. I'll give you instances. First of all, it's not that whenever the president brings anything to the National Assembly, it's being approved as suggested. The first budget of 2020, before the reviewed budget, was tinkered with by the National Assembly, and the president assented to it as passed by the National Assembly. The recent review of the budget will also be tinkered, both on the revenue side and the expenditure side, by the National Assembly. And the president assented to what was passed, not what he presented. And I'm sure you would also remember that even prior to that budget of 2020, the president gave a directive in recognition and respect for the National Assembly that no minister should travel out of this country and during the budget processes, so that he would be represented, he will represent his ministry, during the process of budget scrutiny. So many instances are bound to show that this relationship is based on respect and recognition. And of course, engagement. There had been continuous engagement between the executive arm and the legislature on so many fronts, on government policies, on budgets, on the palliatives, on what has gone into the MTEV and all other factors of running the government. So to say that the legislature just approves whatever the president or the executive brings is not entirely true.
All right.
Why
so,
there is this? Because of
Honorable Yakubu, apologies to cut in. Yeah, just a moment. We'll go for a breather, and when we come back, we'll be asking you, when you say there is a harmonious relationship between the National Assembly and the executive, things don't look exactly like that, because some Nigerians will say that in fact the opposite is happening. There is chaos between both arms of government, and the facts speak for themselves. We come back and analyze this. Don't forget, only yesterday the Senate said that the service chief should be removed or sacked, but the presidency reacted. We dissect more of those issues after this break. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. For those the critics of the Buhari government, they say the center is no longer holding, and in fact there is chaos under this government. How true is that? So Senator Adesanya Ogunlewe experience in the National Assembly and in the executive, and as well we're getting experience from Senator Shehu Sani, and we are getting reactions from Honorable Umar Yakubu, who is the SSA to the President on National Assembly matters. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in. Let me get, before I allow Senator Ogunlewe to come in, Honorable Yakubu, when you say there is a harmonious relationship, one day the president said, every appointee of mine who goes to the National Assembly should respect them. 2 days or 3 days later, Senator Godswill Akpabio had a very turbulent moment with the National Assembly, and afterwards they gave a 48-hour ultimatum for him to release the names of those he accused. Yesterday, it was the turn of Senator Chris Ngige, who is the Minister of Labour. We have also heard the reaction of the National Assembly on Mr. Festus Keyamo and the Special Works Program. When you say there is harmonious relationship, it does look at the definition as changing the dictionary.
No, the definition has certainly not changed. What you are seeing is, like I have mentioned earlier, Mr. President's appreciation of the independence of the legislature, and having directed everyone in his government to honor invitation and respect calls by the National Assembly, one can attest to the fact that they are honoring the invitation and they are indeed respecting the call. As to what happens in the engagement, it's not something that Mr. President intends to dictate how the legislature runs its affairs. And that in itself shows the independence and the fact that they are not being teleguided, nor are their proceedings being teleguided by the executive. So to that extent, one would appreciate the fact that, they honor the invitation, they respected the National Assembly, and of course, in their oversight functions, the National Assembly had raised questions to these ministers, and how they responded and how the engagement goes about is not teleguided by anybody, because there are questions raised and there are answers being given by the members of the executive, in this case, the two ministers you mentioned. And how the proceeding goes, the fact that it's not being guided by the president or anybody outside that room, it means that it's an engagement based on each one's position or right to defend themselves and their right to ask these questions. Clearly, the National Assembly has the right of oversight functions, and in their oversight functions, they have the right to invite members of the government.
Honorable Yakub, let me bring in Senator Ogunlawe back into the conversation. Senator Ogunlawe, you heard, sorry, Honorable Yakub, let me allow Senator Ogunlawe to get into the conversation. You heard what Honorable Yakub said. Is there harmony in this government?
It is clear that there is none because of the style of leadership of Mr. President. Mr. President is the national leader of the party, and he cannot just look and then the party members behaving as if they don't have the mandate of the people to govern this country.
Has the president lost the grip?
No, I don't say so. We are an underdeveloped country. We expect us to be, not to be where we are today. But this is not what they voted for. They voted for progress. They voted for welfare of the people. They voted for security. Let somebody be in charge.
Are you saying the president is not in charge?
He's not. He's in charge. But I'm saying let somebody be
politically speaking now. That's what I'm asking.
No. I'm saying this is not what people voted for. They voted for progress. People are hungry. People have no jobs. Then all these things they are doing, to my mind, it is not in the interest of the people.
There is a columnist, a writer who gave, it's almost a week now, who said, Mr. President, take charge. Is that admonition a right one?
No. Let us encourage Mr. President. His background is military. This is democracy. The more consultation you do, the better for the country. Call everybody together and read the Arrow Act. They are members of your party. It is not the opposition that is causing problem now. It is the members of APC that are causing problems for Mr. President. So you must call them to order.
So, Senator, when you see members of the executive pointing accusing fingers in the public hearing that we have seen, we saw one yesterday and we saw one day before yesterday, when ministers are saying members of the parliament are fingered in the corruption process, bedeviling an MDA of government. Where do we go from here?
It is pure indiscipline. Somebody must discipline somebody. If you make that kind of, conclusion, you must be able to prove it. But that is not what is of interest to Nigerians. Nigerians are fed up. They want to eat. They want jobs. We have families, 5 of them graduates. They have no jobs. This is not what they voted for. Somebody must take charge.
Who do you think can fix this?
It's Mr. President.
Can someone advise or help him in this regard?
The buck stop on his table. They voted for him because of that purpose. That is why we have a presidential system. It's not a parliamentary system where there is collective responsibility.
All right.
It is one person that is responsible to all of us, and he must act.
Is this a failure of the APC?
No. You see, we are advising on the television because of your own experience. Tell what you feel must be done.
Okay. Let me bring Senator Shehu Sani here. Weigh in, if you may, in one breath. The National Assembly says service chiefs should be sacked. The presidency said, look, you cannot just tell us that. It's the prerogative of the president to do that. And that's not the first time we are hearing that. And you saw what happened in the public hearing. What exactly do you think is happening, and what is the way forward?
Well, the job of the service chief is to lead a security apparatus that will protect the people and defend the country. But they have failed. Our people are being killed every day from Borno State to Katsina, Zamfara, Niger, Kaduna, and several other places, Benue and Co. So if they have consistently failed to do that, it is time to have new people with fresh ideas and new ideas that will take charge and address the problems that is threatening to consume our country. So the National Assembly is right. They should go. Because
does not seem to agree with that.
Their best is not good enough.
Senator Shehu Sani,
yes.
The president does not seem to agree with that. The statement coming from the presidency does not seem to be in that direction. He doesn't think they should go just yet.
It is democracy, but I believe that you should understand that once the country continues to falter, people are being killed, it is not the legacy of the service chiefs that is under question. It is his own. When he is out of office someday, nobody will remember the name of the chief of air staff, chief of naval staff, chief of army staff. It is the president that will be blamed. So when people say change the service chief, they still like the president. And I believe that they love the country most, and the president should listen to that and bring in new people with new ideas, fresh ideas that will address the security challenges that is consuming.
Let's close the program now, Senator Shehu Sani, and let me allow Honorable El Yakub in 20 seconds, and I'll get 20 seconds also from Senator Shehu Sani. Where do we go from here? It does look like a lot of people are losing hope in the way and manner things have played out in the last few days. 20 seconds, where do we go from here, Honorable El Yakub?
I certainly would not lose hope, and I believe the president is in charge, is in full control of the affairs of this country. And if you look at all the issues being discussed, even the ones mentioned in this program, has something to do with service to the Nigerian people, for which the president has stood firm on. When you look at the issue of Honorable Minister of State Keyamo and the 774,000 jobs to be created across the country, the president said this policy would go on and Nigerians would be
so we need to,
and
let me get Senator Ogunlawe's 20 seconds final word.
Mr. President, you have to be in charge. They voted for him. They didn't vote for any other person than him. The trust of Nigerians of Mr. President was unbelievable, and he shouldn't allow us to feel that we misplace our judgment.
Is that trust still there?
No, you must take it. You must take charge, as far as I'm concerned. Because at the end of the day, it is his government.
I must sincerely thank you, Senator Adesheyi Ogunlawe, former Minister of Works, and former Senator Shehu Sani. Thank you so much for your thought, and Honorable El Yakub, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts. But before we go, let's give you this information. President Muhammadu Buhari will tomorrow depart for Bamako, the Republic of Mali, on a day visit, following the briefing by the ECOWAS Special Envoy to the country, former President Goodluck Jonathan. That's how we draw the curtain of the program.